Good afternoon, and thank you for all being here today. I want to start by stating that the recent multiple homicides in our city continue to be investigated by Homicide Section, and as such, I'm not at liberty to discuss specifics around the event. This tragedy, however, yet again underlines the need to raise public awareness on domestic violence, which continues to be prevalent in many communities across Canada, including Edmonton. Just last weekend, on the heels of such a terrible crime that cost the lives of 9 people, including the perpetrator, our police officers responded to another 15 domestic violence calls across the city. Some of these involved intoxicated spouses, while others involved weapons. 2 of them involved very serious injuries. Sadly, in my capacity as the staff sergeant in charge of the EPS Domestic Offender Crime Section, this number is troubling and yet all too familiar. In 2012, there were 7,761 occurrences reported to the EPS that involved domestic violence. In 2013, EPS responded 7,679 occurrences, and recorded to date, there were 7,601 domestic violence occurrences in 2014. So for most part, static across the board. In 2013, however, our 6 DOCS detectives on average managed an intense caseload of 21 investigations each. Last year, with 2 additional detectives added to our roster, that caseload went up to 24 files. We ended up with a total of 197 files investigated by DOCS in 2014, as compared to 127 files in 2013. My concern is that we're seeing an escalation in the severity of the violence, even though the annual number seems to be staying pretty static. These are ongoing societal patterns and behaviors that aren't going to dissipate without everyone's commitment to change. My message here is twofold. To the victims of domestic violence, there is help. Comprehensive resources are available to the victims of domestic violence. You don't have to wait until things get out of control to contact someone. Don't wait till there's bruises and broken bones. Reach out and contact agencies such as the Today Center, who will guide you through the difficult choices you will have to make. There are plenty of resources to assist you, not just the police. And to the community, domestic violence is everyone's responsibility. Whether you're a neighbor, a co-worker, or a direct family member, sitting idly by and not doing something could cost someone their life. Now we have here today Debbie Clark from the Today Center, who will speak about some of these excellent resources available to everyone in Edmonton. Then, after that, we'll be happy to take some questions. But again, remind you that there will be about questions about domestic violence in general in Edmonton, not about the specific events. Debbie?
Well, thank you very much. And our messaging is very similar to that of what you've heard already today. Is the tagline for the Today Family Violence Help Center is actually "There is help." And there is help in the city in a coordinated effort around family violence and domestic violence since our center opened in 2009. Like many of the other domestic violence and family violence resources in the city, we do have limited capacity, but the Today Center was set up for those who are questioning whether or not their relationship is abusive, or friends or family or neighbor have concerns over someone and how they're being treated in their relationship, that they can contact the Today Family Violence Help Center here in Edmonton free of charge and receive help and be referred to resources and connected to different community agencies. Like the Edmonton Police Service, we have seen an increase, especially in 2014, over the number of people who are contacting the Today Centre, as well as those who actually become clients for our short-term support. On average, in the last couple of years, we typically support around 300 clients, which may not seem a lot. We're a team of 2.5 staff. We're a Monday to Friday operation from 9 to 5. But most importantly, we work with over 130 community agency programs in the city. The issue of family violence and domestic violence is very complex, and it really is an issue for those who are being abused, that they really do need support. And while the agencies in the city, like the Today Family Violence Help Centre, are doing excellent work, it's very encouraging for me to see so many of the media here today wanting to get the message out that us as small agencies aren't able to do on our own, of where people can go for help and what we can do to support those, especially in light of a very recent tragic incident that we've had within the last week. And although that's not typical for Edmonton, it is important for everyone to understand that there is a lot of complexity around this issue, and it's not something that any individual should be dealing with alone. They should be dealing with an agency like the Today Family Violence Help Centre that can connect them with the resources that they need, depending on their individual situation. We receive thousands of calls each year just from individuals looking for information, and we're able to provide them with support around recognizing the warning signs in abusive relationships, how to make a plan to stay safe, and sometimes that plan involves the entire family and neighbors and other supporters as well. We're able to help them understand the cycle of abuse, and that it's not their fault, they deserve to be treated better, and that there is help to help them start that journey. We're also able to connect them with community resources that are applicable to their own specialized individual situation. We work with adults, so 18 and over, and we're able to connect them with resources within the same day or the very next business day. So as you can understand, in light of the events this week, all of us as agencies in the city have experienced an increase in calls and requests for support, and I'm here today with one of our key community partners to hopefully help get the word out that Edmonton has a coordinated community response through the Today Family Violence Help Centre, and that we're here to help, and hopefully we can get the message to those that need us the most.
Yes, go ahead.
How common is it for somebody to come forward with allegations, subsequently recant, and subsequently after that, to have those charges stayed as a result?
I don't have the number, but it does happen. It is a part of our process to help victims, give them enough support to see them through the court process. And we have intervention teams, social workers and constables who are specially trained to help victims stay strong, to get them through the process, to get them to court. We built that system because that was a regular occurrence that victims would back away from completing the court system. So we have that in place because we know it does happen.
So you have that in place for people who are going through the court system. What happens when they recant, the charges are stayed? What sort of involvement or support is offered in that?
Well, I have to go back to the numbers. First of all, we have a victim who's told us after intensive intervention that she no longer wants our services. And that victim has made a clear decision that they don't want police involvement anymore. We have to respect that. And if you take a look at the numbers of events that we deal with, we do have victims of domestic violence who do want our services. So we turn our resources to those victims.
So those victims that have recanted and said we don't want you anymore, you're on the picture?
Yes.
Stop for a minute. You mentioned thousands of calls. Can you talk about the range that you look at for each response? Some are obviously not as serious as others, but talk to us about that.
So I'm going to give you some more general numbers. I talked to about 7,600 in the last few years. It's about the number of domestic disputes the EPS respond to. Of those, roughly 2,500 are actually become criminal investigations. Of those criminal investigations, a small portion are serious and complex that actually become to domestic offender crime section for the expert investigation that my detectives provide.
In your mind, why is it that some pull back away after the
There are a lot of reasons. They're mostly personal. It could be financial. It could be pressure, and we recognize that some people could be receiving pressure from the offender. There is family involvement. Taking into consideration the children. And another issue, though, within the city presently with the low vacancy rate is that they have nowhere else to go. And so they stay within that same sphere of influence that they've always been lived in because they have no alternatives.
Sir, can you talk about the concerns you just expanded upon? You said there's an escalation in the violence you're seeing in domestic abuse cases. Can you expand on that?
So in particular, what I was talking about is in 2013, we handled, in domestic offender crime section, who handles the most serious and complex. 2013, we saw 127 files. And this year, we've now, 2014, there was 197 serious and complex files. So there's that increase, a significant increase. So my detectives, even though I've added to the roster, are actually handling more files that actually caused the need for us to get more detectives in the first place.
And reasons running the gamut? I mean, I'm thinking, you know, when people on their debt load finances have got to be one of the top issues.
I have a theory, and I'm just going to give you a theory, is that there may be some reluctance on victims of domestic violence to come forward, or don't know where to go to get help and get support. So they allow things to continue to grow and get worse, and to the point that now the violence is getting to a significant and substantial level. And that's when they have no choice, but they have to come to the police. And they come to the police when it's too late, when the damage done to them is severe, and it comes to my people.
Professor, you say that there's certain cases that you have to walk away from because they recant charges of state. What troubles you, concerns you about being put in that position?
We put a lot of effort in trying to give victims of domestic violence that support that they need to see them through the process. We know that if we can get them through the process, that they can receive that support that they need from the courts. There'll be that time span that they can move on with their lives. The frustration is that sometimes we lose them, and we want to keep them on board, but we just can't. They have their own motivations for deciding not to continue with the process. They're their own, but we do what we can to keep them on board.
When you say losing, what you call that?
Younger, older, new Canadians, you know, board.
So sorry, I'm going to answer this question and I'll get to yours. Sorry, what was it again?
When you say losing, what do you mean by that?
That they've decided not to keep engaged with us in the process. They've decided not to keep using our services. And we eventually have to respect that. We have to make sure that it's a fully informed decision that they make. But they do make that decision, and we have to live with it.
Just can you talk about demographics? Is it younger, you know,
Not at all. And I think Debbie can even
Yeah.
speak to that. It is across the board, every community, every socioeconomic status. It is consistent across all communities in Edmonton. Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, and I think it's important to recognize, like, I realize you're here today in regards to the recent tragedy, but it's important to note that the majority of those who are being abused do not report to the EPS. Some don't report at all, but we're hoping that many more contact, the agencies that are here in the city. And I guess, we often have circumstances where they aren't engaged with one agency or the EPS any longer, but sometimes they become engaged with other agencies. It's a very long journey and a very long healing process. And when I talked about safety planning, that can come into effect over and over and over and over as their situation changes. As far as specifically, Vinesh, to demographics, we have seen an increase in those ethnocultural clients that are coming to the Today Family Violence Help Center. We attribute that a lot to we're really working hard and being out there in the community and trying to connect with everyone, because this is not an issue that's isolated to any single demographic. So we want to make sure that even for our newcomers, that they're aware that, they have different rights in Canada, and that there are supports here in Edmonton, and that we are here to help. And I think earlier the question was, why do they recant? And this is a very challenging situation that people are in, and it really takes the support of many individuals in the community, not just one group, like the Edmonton Police Service. And I think if we can learn anything from this event, is that we all have a role in this, and each of us here can truly make a difference to try and prevent the tragedy that we witnessed over the last week by, joining in the conversation and working together. There's lots of research out there, but every individual case is different. And we truly do work for a client-centered approach, and we respect if they decide to not go any further in the process, then we support them in their new direction. I think we do, and I've lived in Edmonton my entire life, and specifically chose to work at the Today Family Violence Help Center after a long career as an executive director with other agencies, because we can change. We can make a difference if we work together in this city, and there's a lot of good resources in place, but we're all under-resourced, and really it is about moving more towards early intervention and prevention, which is what our provincial framework talks about. But we need to all come together and figure out how to do that and how to fund that through a coordinated approach. And so we have all the processes in place, and I'm very, hopeful that we can learn from a very, very tragic event of how each of us can come together and do that, and that includes the media. Organizations do excellent work in this city, including the EPS. We work with almost all of them, but we do really need to start at an earlier age, and we need the resources, and we need to invest in that. One new initiative that the Today Center is involved in is education around family violence across the lifespan. We have elder abuse teams and City of Edmonton staff, and Sean and his team are regularly at our office at different meetings. So, we have all of the resources in place. We just need more supports to really, truly coordinate a strategy here in the city.
I don't quite understand why the severity, why the number of services are increasing now. I get that this might be coming too late. Why are the numbers going up now?
Yeah, well, I think it's because we are starting to have these conversations, and we have done some work in the community, not only our organization, but a lot of agencies across the country. We're now involved in training in domestic violence in the workplace. 90% of the disclosures are to friends and family, to a coworker in a doctor's office. I have with me today Michelle LaRue, our Special Projects Officer. She designed with a couple of community partners the family violence across the lifespan that we deliver to service practitioners, to doctors' offices. We also do short-term training with them, and it really is about connecting early on when they first, when any of us have kind of, you get the sick feeling in your stomach that something isn't quite right, is learning how to safely connect that person with resources that they need very early on. And I think, some pretty big media figures have come forward lately, and the whole issue around domestic violence and sexual assault has become more of maybe our dinner time conversation. So I think that's attributed to the increases as well. And I think also, we've only been open 5 years, but I think we've really started to connect the agencies together and working better together, including the Edmonton Police Service, and making sure that there is help when people need it, and trying to make sure that people know our resources are available.
Yeah, and I've struggled with trying to figure that out myself. And the only theory that I can come up with, and again, as I said earlier, it's only a theory, is that for some reason, victims of domestic violence are holding back in accessing services when they could. And that's why we're here right now. In other words, there's a reluctance to come forward, or they don't know where to go. I'm not sure if that's the case. But I think it's necessary for us to have that conversation, to get the word out that there are services within Edmonton that can help people. That victims have somewhere to go, and they don't have to wait until things get out of hand. Because I think that may be part of the issue, that they're waiting until things get out of hand. And I don't want that to be the case. I want them to take some sort of action when they recognize they're in that situation where there's domestic violence immediately. Either come to the police or reach out for advice to the Today Center or the wide range of other agencies within the city before it escalates to a point that now you need a specialized investigator to do the investigation.
Two questions.
Sorry. I really don't know the answer, other than there has been an increase. And I have a very vague theory, but I'm trying to address it by coming here in front of the media and saying, encouraging people to come forward, to go to the community agencies like the Today Center, get advice, and take a proactive step in dealing with this violence. Not to wait, not to hope for the best.
One last question.
Sorry? The domestic offender crime section takes over files from patrol members when there's an aggravated assault, when there's a choking to the point of unconsciousness, when there's unlawful confinement or kidnapping, when there's a sexual assault in that intimate partner violence context, and when there's a firearm involved in the violence. And those ones are deemed to be at the highest risk for lethality for the victim of domestic violence.
They we are, what the previous generation did, what the previous generation did. What needs to happen?
We need a comprehensive community approach. We need to recognize that we need to provide services like Debbie's, give them a greater voice, give them a greater opportunity to reach out to the community, to provide support they can to victims of domestic violence so that we can help them, the victims, before it gets too out of control, and so that we can diminish the severity of the violence and hopefully bring it under control.
Yeah. I think the language that I used is that all of the agencies overall have received an increase in calls. And I guess what's really challenging about this work is we don't know how many people are going to call on any given day, but typically there are some trends that we know of, and typically when it comes after the Christmas holiday season and things that they talked about, bills start to come in. I mean, there's so many different issues that play a factor in escalating the violence that could already be happening within the family unit. Of course, when there's such a horrific, tragic incident within the city, I mean, we are going to experience an increase in calls, but it's a mix in calls between, where can people go for help? So general information, and also for people that, I don't want to leave this any longer. Like, I think I'm in an abusive relationship, and how can you help me, or what can I do? So it's really challenging to attribute it to any of the given factors. I mean, it's very much like all the other issues we deal with in the city, the poverty, all of these types of things. And Vanessa, when you talk about how can we deal with this so it's not in the next generation, how long has poverty been around, right? And I think it's important to realize today that Edmonton is actually ahead of the game than some of the other municipalities, in that we have worked very hard over the last 5 years and 4 years before that to have a coordinated community response through the Today Centre with its partners in Edmonton. And that is a model that was built on a lot of research, and it's now being tested worldwide. And I think the big thing in leaving today and ending this conference is that there is help, and that we can each play a role in making sure that people are connected and they have supports to put a safety plan in place so that they can stay safe. And it's going to be challenging into the future to be able to connect to any different trends or things that are happening. We keep our efforts focused on making sure we have the resources available for people when they need us and when they need us the most, and to intervene as early as we can.
So you can't really say whether this will make people up.
No, it's really hard to say. But I think this gives us an opportunity for all of us to reflect and think about how we can work together, and we can learn from the incident in the future to when we're working, hopefully within this generation and into future generations, of perhaps how, we can support people earlier.
I don't think there'll be any more updates. I think the investigation is ongoing, not surrounding criminality at this particular time. I think it's just trying to dot the I's and cross the T's with respect to the natural progression of an investigation file. So as far as criminality, there's nothing going to court. They know who their suspect was, and I think that's that. Pardon me? Because the investigation is still ongoing at this time. Because those are internal protocols. Thank you for coming.